Have you ever felt it? A connection so intense it defies all logic. A silent bond that feels deeper than words could ever express. It's that haunting presence of someone that echoes in your soul, even when they're miles away. It's that unsettling electric shock of recognition when you meet a stranger, feeling as if you've known them for 1,000 years. If you are feeling this, know that you are not going crazy, and you are not alone. These experiences are not a coincidence. They are a profound spiritual calling, emerging from the invisible depths of your psyche to reveal a powerful and often ignored truth about your destiny. This feeling is a universal language, spoken by souls all across the globe. And I am curious, how far has this message traveled to find you today? Let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from, so we can all see just how far the quest for this wisdom reaches. For years, you may have carried the weight of these connections, wondering what they mean. Today you get your answer. The legendary psychologist Carl Jung provided the key to unlock this great mystery. He taught that these significant encounters are not just relationships, they are symbolic mirrors. The people you feel spiritually tied to are reflecting the hidden parts of your own soul back at you, your unrecognized desires, your deepest fears, and your most brilliant qualities. In a true spiritual connection, this mirroring is so intensified it can feel like destiny, an almost magical familiarity that can be both intoxicating and deeply confusing. Before we dive into the sacred signs your soul is trying to show you, I have to mention that an astonishing number of people who find life-changing insights on this channel are not subscribed. If you are ready to stop feeling confused by these powerful emotions and start wielding them for your own transformation, then hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications. Give this video a like to signal that this knowledge is important and that you're ready for the journey. You will not want to miss a single step of what we are about to uncover. Now, prepare to finally recognize what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. Another fundamental concept is the shadow. In deep spiritual bonds, the personal shadow is often intensely activated. The other person awakens in us both our light and our rejected, ignored, or denied parts. This friction, though uncomfortable, is precisely what drives individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the conscious and the unconscious. It is also common in spiritual connections for there to be an archetypal activation of the anima and animus, the internal feminine and masculine aspects. The other acts as a symbolic bridge to access these internal contents, which are often idealized but always revealing. Thus, from a Jungian perspective, being spiritually connected to someone is an intense opportunity for self-knowledge. It is as if the unconscious uses this person as a portal to reconnect us with who we truly are. And although these connections can be challenging, they offer us a direct path to profound transformation. Throughout life, there are encounters that cannot be explained by common logic. They are connections that carry a symbolic force, as if inscribed on a deeper plane of existence. Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers a powerful perspective for understanding these seemingly fated encounters. They are manifestations of archetypes, universal forms that inhabit the collective unconscious and shape our perception of reality and of others. Jung understood archetypes as inherited psychic patterns that profoundly influence our relationships. When two people meet and feel an immediate, inexplicable connection, it is possible that they are being moved by complementary archetypes. It is not uncommon for a man to project his anima, the archetypal image of the inner feminine, onto a woman, while a woman projects her animus, the inner masculine, onto a man. This archetypal recognition creates a magnetic field, a sense of reunion with something ancestral and familiar. But archetypal encounters are not limited to romantic attraction. They also manifest in deep friendships, intense rivalries, or encounters that cause drastic changes in our paths. These are people who act as catalysts for our individuation process, awakening dormant dimensions within us, breaking down internal structures, or challenging our certainties. It is as if the collective unconscious, through the activation of certain archetypes, pushes us toward transformation. There is a kind of summons in these encounters. Even if they involve pain, separation, or conflict, there is a greater purpose, to set in motion parts of our psyche that were forgotten or repressed. In many cases, these encounters arise at moments of crisis, when the soul is ready to grow, but the conscious personality resists. The arrival of the archetypal other breaks this resistance. He or she represents exactly what we lack or what we need to face. The most intriguing thing about these encounters is that they seem to escape our will. There is a synchronicity, another of Jung's central concepts, operating behind the scenes. Synchronicity is the meaningful coincidence between internal events, such as thoughts or emotions, and external happenings, with no causal relationship, but with profound symbolic meaning. When someone appears in our life unexpectedly and provokes a disproportionate emotional impact, it is likely that a synchronicity is at play, guided by unconscious forces that demand expression. These connections are not just romantic in a superficial sense, they have an initiatory character. Jung pointed out that by relating deeply with someone, we are led to the experience of the self, the regulating center of the psyche, which integrates and guides us. The other becomes a messenger of our own integration process. This explains why certain encounters are so memorable and often hard to forget, even when they end. When someone activates an archetype in us, it is not necessarily comfortable. We often feel fascination, fear, resistance, or obsession. The emotional intensity is proportional to the symbolic depth of the experience. And although the mind tries to explain or rationalize, the true learning lies in recognizing the symbolic meaning of the encounter. The other is there to reveal something about us, not just to satisfy desires, but to expand us. Therefore, not all archetypal encounters are pleasant. Sometimes, that person's role is to confront us, destroy illusions, or pull us out of our comfort zone. These are encounters with psychic and spiritual purposes, not just social ones. When we see them this way, we stop viewing life as a game of chance and start to perceive the depth of what is at stake, the evolution of the soul. These people who seem destined do not come by chance. They are living bridges between the unconscious and consciousness, and the true gift of these encounters lies in what they reveal to us about who we really are and where our soul wants to go. When we are spiritually connected to someone, there is a distinct feeling of familiarity, as if that person reveals something forgotten, something that pulses within us. This happens in large part due to the phenomenon of projection, a central concept in Jung's analytical psychology. Projection is the process by which we transfer unrecognized internal contents onto another person, often unconsciously. In other words, we see in the other what is within us, but which we cannot see directly. This mechanism is inevitable and to some degree necessary. Without it, we would not form deep bonds, because it is through the human mirror that we begin to perceive the extent of our own psyche. But in intense spiritual relationships, this projection gains a much greater emotional volume. We begin to idealize the other or, in opposite cases, feel repulsion, rejection, or distrust, all based on aspects of ourselves that have not yet been integrated. Projections are especially powerful when they involve the archetypes of the anima and animus. Jung explained that in loving and deep relationships, we do not fall in love with an ordinary person, but with an inner image that we project onto them. This image carries symbolic traits from our unconscious, reflecting both our repressed qualities and our deepest wounds. The person becomes a psychic mirror, and that is why we feel so much attraction or so much discomfort. The other shows us who we are, even if we do not realize it consciously. Over time, projections tend to dissolve. When this happens, we are challenged to see the other as they truly are, with their flaws, humanity, and complexity. And it is here that the process of individuation intensifies. The relationship transforms into a fertile ground for self-knowledge, as everything we attributed to the other begins to point inward. Enchantment gives way to truth, and the truth is always revealing. There is something profoundly transformative in this mirroring. Seeing our anger, our tenderness, our fear, and our courage in the other is like opening internal doors that were locked. And by opening these doors, we not only get to know ourselves better, but we also begin to act with more emotional responsibility. The spiritual bond then becomes a symbolic laboratory where we can observe our own contradictions, patterns, and potentials. The great trap, however, is to confuse the other with the projection. This creates unrealistic expectations, unconscious demands, and inevitable disappointments. Many spiritual bonds break at this point because one or both involved cannot separate what is real from what is projected. Jung warned that when we withdraw the projection, the relationship often ends, not because it was false, but because its symbolic function has been fulfilled. The other came to show us something, and once we learn it, the connection may take another course. On the other hand, if both individuals are committed to self-awareness, the bond deepens. The projection, instead of becoming an obstacle, turns into a bridge. The relationship transforms into a journey of mutual discovery, where each recognizes parts of themselves in the other without losing autonomy and clarity. This is the essence of a truly spiritual encounter. Not dependence, but shared growth. Being spiritually connected to someone often means having the courage to look inward, using the other as a symbolic mirror. It is a call to integrate what has been exiled, heal old wounds, and rescue dormant potentials. Projection is the first step, but the real transformation happens when we choose to go beyond it with humility, consciousness, and presence. By recognizing in the other a reflection of ourselves, we take a decisive step toward wholeness. And it is at this point that the spiritual bond reveals its greatest beauty. It brings us closer to who we really are, while at the same time teaching us to love the other as they are, without illusions, without masks, with truth. There are connections that not only enchant us, they unsettle us, awakening something intense, uncomfortable, visceral. It's as if the mere presence of the other is capable of touching wounds we didn't even know existed. Within Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this experience is understood. Through the concept of the shadow, all the aspects of the personality that we reject, deny, or do not recognize in ourselves. And it is no coincidence that deep spiritual bonds often forcefully activate this forgotten dimension of our being. The shadow is not only composed of negative traits like anger, envy, pride, or fear. It also includes unexpressed gifts, repressed desires, and qualities we were taught to suppress. In an intense spiritual connection, the other becomes an involuntary channel for this activation. He or she seems to know without knowing exactly where to touch, exactly what to expose, and the effect of this can be overwhelming. Contrary to what one might imagine, this is not a sign that the relationship is wrong. On the contrary, Jung saw in these activations precious opportunities for individuation, the continuous process of becoming who we truly are. The other, by activating our shadow, offers us the chance to look it in the face. But this requires courage, because the shadow does not show itself in a pleasant way. It comes through conflicts, resistance, jealousy, frustrations, and seemingly irrational feelings. The emotional discomfort that these relationships provoke is precisely the sign that something important is emerging from the unconscious. The ego, accustomed to protecting and controlling, enters a crisis, but it is in this crisis that the possibility of evolution lies. The other is not attacking us. They are revealing. And what they reveal is, in fact, ours. It is our fear of being vulnerable, our need for control, our difficulty in trusting, our pain of abandonment, our unhealed neediness. Many intense spiritual bonds face ruptures or estrangements at this very point. The activation of the shadow is so powerful that some prefer to flee, cut contact, rationalize, distort, but the experience has already been registered in the soul and will hardly be forgotten. Because the shadow once seen can no longer be ignored. It will continue to present itself, whether through dreams, emotional symptoms, or new relationships with the same symbolic pattern. Therefore, the true value of a spiritual connection lies not only in harmony, but in friction, in confrontation, in the uncomfortable mirror. The other person serves us as an instrument of revelation, and that is sacred, although often painful. When we can sustain this process without projecting blame onto the other, we take a giant step towards consciousness. We begin to perceive that the old pain reactivated by the bond is the key to inner liberation. Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in spiritual relationships, this darkness often emerges with force, but it does not come to destroy. It comes to integrate. The process of individuation requires us to reconcile with the shadow, to know it, to recognize its role. And in this sense, the other is the initiator, the one who opens the door, even if unintentionally, so that we can see ourselves whole. It is crucial to understand that the pain caused by a spiritual bond is not always a sign that it should be avoided. Sometimes it is just the opposite. It is a sign that there is internal work to be done, and that this person was the perfect catalyst for it. Of course, this does not mean accepting abusive relationships or remaining in harmful dynamics, but rather interpreting the experience symbolically, understanding what it awakens and why. The other, by activating our shadow, offers us the rare chance to reconnect with forgotten parts of the soul. They point inward to what needs to be healed, integrated, and embraced. And by going through this journey with courage and honesty, we not only heal ourselves, but also purify the relationship, whether it is brief or lasting. Because in the end, true spirituality is not about avoiding pain, but about traversing it with awareness. And when a bond shows us this, it becomes more than a relationship. It becomes a path of transformation. In many cases, the most intense spiritual bonds are not permanent. They emerge with the force of a whirlwind, transform everything they touch, and when their psychic mission is complete, they disappear. At first glance, this may seem cruel or even unfair, but in light of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, these separations are part of a deeper and necessary process, the path of individuation. Individuation is the core of Jungian thought. It is the process by which the individual becomes who they are, integrating their conscious and unconscious parts to achieve an inner totality. And paradoxically, many of the most spiritually significant encounters are not meant to last. They exist to accelerate this path. They are initiatory, symbolic relationships that carry within them the power to reveal hidden aspects of our being. But once this revelation is fulfilled, the bond may dissolve. This separation, however, rarely happens without pain. When we are spiritually connected to someone, the sense of loss transcends physical abandonment. It feels as if we have lost a part of ourselves. And in a sense, it's true. We have lost the projection. We have lost the symbolic function that the other played in our psyche. It is as if a mirror has been broken. But it is precisely here that the process of individuation comes into play, demanding that what we saw in the other must now be found within ourselves. Jung warned that no true inner growth happens without confronting loss. When the other leaves, we are forced to care for the wound they exposed. The soul, previously projected onto the bond, must now be reintegrated into our own psyche. And this, although painful, is profoundly transformative. We begin to walk with more autonomy, more lucidity, more presence. It is important to understand that the end of a spiritual connection does not invalidate its importance. On the contrary, many of these relationships are marked by their brevity and intensity. They enter our lives like a spark, a symbolic shock, a turning point. They awaken feelings, open portals, pull us out of automatic behavior, and then depart, like a master who teaches what is necessary and then disappears. Not because the bond was illusory, but because its psychic function has been fulfilled. This perspective invites a rare emotional maturity. Instead of seeking eternity in bonds, we can seek meaning. Instead of trying to keep the other at all costs, we can ask, what did this person awaken in me that I now need to cultivate alone? This internal shift is essential. It marks the passage from enchantment to consciousness, from symbolic dependence to inner autonomy. And sometimes the separation is not definitive, but cyclical. The bond can transform, change shape, require new outlines. Many spiritual connections return at other times in life, with a new quality, after both souls have matured. But this only happens when there is internal space for this reunion, when the ego is no longer seeking completeness in the other, but rather a true exchange. And so, you now understand the most profound truth. The pain of separation is not your failure. It is your initiation. It is the sacred rite of passage that forces you to look inward and unleash the emotional and psychic power that has been dormant within you. You now hold the secret to sustaining your own wholeness, no longer depending on another's presence to feel alive. As the great Carl Jung revealed, true love is not a desperate fusion, but a sacred encounter between two complete souls. And for you to become whole, some connections must end. Their divine purpose is to depart, so that your individuation can finally begin, allowing you to perhaps meet again one day, not as two halves, but as two powerful, conscious and true individuals. You can now stop fighting the flow of your soul. You can trust that every person who resonates with you, even if their purpose includes leaving, is part of a grander design. Their departure is not a loss, it is a transition, a symbolic gift that has eternalized something magnificent within you. You now see that life is not a series of random encounters, it is a trail of revelations. True spirituality is not about avoiding pain, but about recognizing the symbolic meaning in every experience and using it as fuel for your own divine growth. To anchor this powerful realization deep within your being, I want you to make a declaration to yourself and to the universe. Comment below with this simple, powerful affirmation. I honor my path. This act seals your understanding and claims your power. This journey into the mysteries of the soul is ongoing, and it's astonishing how many of you who experience these breakthroughs with us have not yet subscribed. If you are committed to mastering the language of your soul and decoding the sacred signs in your life, do not let this moment fade. Hit the like button now to help this wisdom. Find others who are searching. And most importantly, click that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. What we have uncovered today is just the beginning, and you do not want to miss the next critical step on your path of transformation. Go forward now and honor every invisible bond your soul has ever chosen. You are the master of your journey.